The night Daniel finally asked his neighbor for dating help, he didn't expect his hands to shake like they used to the first time he held his newborn son, because Daniel wasn't nervous about women, he was scared of hope, the kind that creeps in quietly and then leaves devastation behind when it walks out the door, and as a single dad of 7 years, hope had become the most dangerous thing in his life. His evenings were predictable, bath time at 7, homework negotiations at 8, bedtime stories at 9, and silence after that, the kind of silence that feels loud because it echoes with everything you didn't say and everyone who didn't stay, and that night was no different until he saw her across the fence, Maya, his neighbor, standing barefoot on her porch with a mug of tea she never seemed to finish, the woman who had watched his son Leo grow up from a stroller to scraped knees to asking too many questions, the woman who laughed too easily and looked too closely, and Daniel didn't plan the words, they just slipped out of him when she asked, "Long day?" And he replied, "I don't know how to date anymore," a sentence that felt heavier than it sounded, because dating meant opening doors he'd welded shut after Leo's mom walked away with a suitcase and a promise to call, a promise that turned into birthdays missed and excuses that sounded rehearsed, and Maya didn't tease him, didn't smile awkwardly, didn't give the polite advice people give when they don't want to get involved. Instead she leaned against the fence, studied his face like it was a problem worth solving, and said, "Do you want to date to impress someone, or do you want to be chosen?" And Daniel froze because no one had ever asked him that, not his friends who said he should get back out there, not his co-workers who tried to set him up, not even himself, and before he could answer, Maya continued, her voice calm but bold, "Because if it's the second one, you're doing everything wrong," and that sentence hit him harder than rejection ever had, because rejection was familiar but this was exposure, and he laughed it off at first, made a joke about dad bods and lack of free time, but Maya shook her head and said, "You hide behind responsibility like it's armor, but the right woman isn't looking for armor, she's looking for honesty," and something in Daniel cracked, the kind of crack you don't hear but feel spreading slowly. And he admitted things he hadn't said out loud, that he didn't know how to flirt without feeling stupid, that every first date felt like a job interview where he was already disqualified for having a kid, that he feared letting Leo see him care about someone who might disappear, and Maya listened, really listened, not interrupting, not fixing, just letting him exist in the mess of it, until she finally said the words that left him completely speechless, "Then stop dating women. Let them date you," and Daniel stared at her, confused, almost offended, until she explained, "You walk into dates apologizing for your life, your son, your schedule, your past. You don't realize those are the things that make you rare. The right woman won't tolerate your life, she'll want to be part of it," and Daniel felt his throat tighten because he suddenly saw himself the way Maya saw him, not broken, not leftover, not compromised, but valuable, and before he could respond, she added with a soft smile, "And if you want practice, stop asking strangers who don't know you. Ask someone who does," and the air between them shifted, not romantic, not awkward, but electric in a way that made his heart pound, and that was the moment Daniel realized this wasn't just dating advice, it was a door opening to a version of himself he'd buried, and as the porch light flickered on and Leo's voice called from inside, "Dad?" Daniel knew his life had just changed, even if he didn't know how yet, and if you've ever felt like your story ended when someone walked away, don't move, because this is just the beginning, and trust me, you'll want to subscribe before chapter 2, because what Maya does next changes everything. Daniel didn't sleep that night, not because of romantic thoughts but because Maya's words replayed like a song he couldn't turn off, "Let them date you," echoing through memories of every time he'd shrunk himself to fit someone else's expectations, and the next morning he watched Leo eat cereal with the seriousness of a CEO reviewing quarterly losses and wondered what kind of example he was setting. A man who taught his son to be brave but quietly avoided bravery himself, and when Daniel ran into Maya again later that day, he expected things to feel awkward, but instead she handed him a folded piece of paper like it was nothing and said, "Your rules," and inside were handwritten truths. Don't apologize for being a dad, don't oversell your pain, don't audition for affection, invite connection instead. And Daniel laughed, then swallowed hard, because no one had ever invested this much care in him without wanting something in return, and when he asked why she was helping him, Maya answered honestly, "Because I see you," and that was when it happened, not fireworks, not a kiss, but clarity, the realization that love doesn't always announce itself loudly, sometimes it shows up consistently, quietly, in borrowed sugar, in waved hellos, in fences leaned on after long days, and Daniel decided to try, not with Maya, not yet, but with himself, and his next date was different, not perfect, but real. He talked about Leo without shame, laughed without checking the room, listened instead of performing, and when the woman across from him smiled and said, "You're not what I expected," Daniel replied, "Good," for the first time meaning it, and later that night he found Maya on her porch again and told her everything, the small victories, the fears still lingering, and she hugged him, a simple hug that felt like permission to move forward. And when Leo tugged Maya's hand and asked, "Are you coming to my game on Saturday?" Daniel held his breath, because that question carried weight, and Maya looked at him before answering, respecting the moment, respecting him, and said, "Only if your dad says it's okay," and Daniel nodded, realizing love wasn't a leap, it was a series of choices made with care, and as the weeks passed, the lines blurred, not rushed, not forced, but honest. And one evening, as they sat watching Leo sleep on the couch after a long day, Maya whispered, "I never meant to help you date someone else." And Daniel smiled softly and replied, "I think you helped me choose myself first," and that's the kind of story we don't hear enough, the quiet ones, the ones where healing looks like patience and courage looks like showing up again. And if this story touched you even a little, if you've ever felt invisible, afraid to love again, or unsure how to begin, hit subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that second chances don't come with loud announcements, they come with neighbors, conversations, and one bold answer that changes everything. Red Heart. The first time Daniel realized he was afraid of losing Maya wasn't when she laughed with another man at Leo's soccer game or when her phone buzzed late at night and she stepped away to answer it, it was when she didn't show up at all. When Saturday came and went and her porch light stayed dark, and Daniel found himself glancing at the fence like something essential was missing. Because Maya had quietly become part of the rhythm of his life, the way Leo asked for her opinion on his drawings, the way Daniel saved small moments just to tell her later, and when he finally texted her and received no reply, a familiar fear crept in, the old one, the one that whispered, "Don't get comfortable, people leave." And that night Daniel sat alone after Leo fell asleep, realizing how dangerous it felt to care again, because caring meant risk, and the next morning he woke up to a knock on his door that made his heart race. Not because he expected romance, but because he expected disappointment, and when he opened it, Maya stood there looking exhausted, eyes rimmed red, holding her keys like she'd been gripping them for hours, and before Daniel could speak, she said, "I didn't disappear because of you," as if she'd heard his thoughts, as if she knew exactly where his mind had gone, and she explained that her estranged sister had shown up unannounced, carrying old wounds and unresolved anger, reminding Maya of a past she rarely talked about, a past where she learned to survive alone, to help others without needing help herself, and Daniel listened the same way she had listened to him that first night, without interrupting, without fixing, just present, and when she finished, silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy, until Daniel said the bravest thing he'd said in years, "You don't have to handle things alone anymore," and Maya looked at him like no one had ever offered her that before. Like the words themselves needed time to land, and that was when Leo appeared behind Daniel, rubbing his eyes, and said, "Is Maya okay?" And Maya knelt down, forcing a smile, and said, "I will be," and in that moment Daniel understood something profound, that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing, it was about showing up when things were messy, and over the next few weeks they moved carefully, honestly, not labeling anything, not rushing, but choosing each other in small ways, shared dinners, late conversations, quiet walks, until one evening Maya finally asked the question Daniel had been avoiding, "Are you afraid of loving me because I'm your neighbor, or because you think I'll leave?" And Daniel felt the truth rise up, uncomfortable and raw, and he admitted that part of him still believed happiness was temporary, that single dads weren't allowed fairy tale endings, and Maya didn't argue, didn't reassure him with promises she couldn't guarantee. She simply said, "Then let's not promise forever. Let's promise honesty," and that answer stayed with him, because it was bold in a way that felt safe, and the real test came when Leo's mother called out of nowhere, her voice uncertain, asking if she could visit, reopening a chapter Daniel thought was closed, stirring confusion, fear, and unresolved emotions, and Daniel didn't hide it from Maya, didn't minimize it, he told her everything, and instead of jealousy, Maya showed respect, stepping back just enough to give him space, and that space terrified Daniel more than closeness ever had, because it made him realize the choice was his now, not dictated by fear or obligation, but by intention, and as Daniel stood between the past that once broke him and the future quietly waiting on the other side of a fence, he understood that asking for dating help had never been about finding someone new, it had been about learning how to choose love without apology. And if you're watching this thinking, "What would I do?" don't go anywhere, because Chapter 4 is where Daniel makes the decision that changes everything, and trust me, you'll want to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.